Hello and welcome to Arsenal Domination, where, unless you're a Spurs fan hiding under a rock and pretending it's not happening, you'll all know that Eberiche Eze is due to have his Arsenal medical today. And you'll also all know how excited I am about the signing. But it did get me wondering because, as I said before, Eberiche Eze is a type of player that I think Arsenal need because they don't have the profile in the squad really. That sort of chaotic player that doesn't necessarily do things that you would expect. And as I say, it got me wondering because Mikel Arteta is a manager that is not necessarily rigid in his tactics, although I think that can be a fair accusation at times. But he's very, very structured in the way he wants his team to play. Very, very specific instructions for each game and for each player. And he expects his players to stick with that. And you can sort of see that by the way he gesticulates on the touchline and sort of coordinates and cajoles. Now, he has calmed down slightly sort of since those early days, but that still very much exists. And I don't think that should be a surprise to anyone because his main influences on his managerial career have been David Moyes at Everton and Pep Guardiola at Manchester City. Now, they're very different managers with very different sort of records, but both do have similar traits, which is that they both like structure. David Moyes had a limited team at Everton and at West Ham, and generally speaking, got the most out of them. And he got the most out of them by making sure they were very rigid and very solid defensively, with a very certain identity going forward in the attack, which was essentially play the ball long. I'm being very simplistic here, but play the ball long, play for your set pieces, but make sure above all else that if we don't win the game, let's not lose the game. Pep Guardiola, as we know, his team score a lot of good goals, and they do it by control, and that is controlled possession, controlled build-up, controlled shape, and specific patterns and movements of the players. And you see that all the time with their attacks. They often have a similar pattern to them when you look underneath them. And again, you can see that in Arsenal. You know, we sort of seen that evolution from that very defensive David Moyes team through to that uber controlled team. But Eze doesn't really fit into that. And I think if you try and control Eze's patterns of play, I think you really limit the player. And I think you really limit what you're looking to get out of him. But I think this signing does symbolise what Mikel Arteta is slightly looking for more this season. And we saw it against Bilbao, and we saw Arsenal trying to do it, not very successfully, admittedly, at Old Trafford, which was to try and play with a little bit more chaos. The patterns are still there, the ideas are still there, and the structures are still there, but there's a little bit more licence for Arsenal to make their own decisions on the pitch and to try and make that ball move forward quicker by enabling the players to make those decisions on the fly and change the structure of the build-up of the attack. And that is what Arteta is hoping Arsenal will do, and that's why Eze must be different.